All right, good morning everyone. How are you? Thanks for getting here bright and early, ready to go. Feral host was a bit late, sorry about that. But I was in the midst of having a conversation with Auntie, and it's not, you can't just sort of go, oh, love your work, I've got to run. It sort of just takes a little bit of time to close the conversation and then move on. Wonderful little chat we've got to have with our presenters, but also with you. Who's local? Okay, I should have said who's not local. Okay, so we've got a couple of people. Who's been here for 5 years or less? Who's been here for 5 years or more? Okay, all right. Got a bit of a feel for our audience. I think we've got, there's no real blow-ins here other than a couple of visitors. Most of them are sort of Alice Springs savvy. And I think the best part about our panel is that they're going to give you some real simple tips on how to live here more sustainably across the board. So we'll be talking energy, water, waste, and of course, Rodney, in the garden. But we're going to kick off, first of all, we're going to start with energy. And how do you pronounce it? Airen. So Dow Airen is here from Power and Water, and let's get underway. Welcome, put your hands together and welcome Dow.
Is this a sitting or a standing kind of event?
How do you feel? I'm happy to stand with you. I'm happy to sit.
Yeah.
No, whatever you feel. If you're
I'm
more
going to sit and
comfortable
relax.
sitting. Yeah,
Everyone else is?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Great. It's my first time with a mic. Really happy to have a chance to come and talk here today about energy efficiency. It's the kind of thing that, hopefully everyone thinks about to a certain degree. It is very important. I don't need to remind anyone about, the challenges our climate has at the moment. And it can be quite easy to sort of feel overwhelmed by those things. But also when you stop and think about just how much power you have as an individual to actually lead your life and make choices in your life that you think are going to be, effective and good for the planet, then you are quite empowered. And that's the best we can ever do, is really just make good choices ourselves and hopefully inspire other people by doing that. So with that in mind, I was asked to put together 5 of my favourite energy savings. So I've got a lot of them. I had 6. So look, I'll start from the top on the flyer. So look, a lot of people have already done this in Alice Springs. Our household has only just done it. We've recently bought a house. We're relatively new to Alice Springs, but one of the first things we did was get some PV put on the roof. So that's a really great way that individuals can decide to take responsibility for your own energy production. Your typical household now, you can put a PV system on that will more than cover your energy, your typical electricity consumptions. And look, I've done the maths. That's what I do in my job, is sort of working out the economics of PV. And, I'm confident that... photovoltaic. Sorry, that's jive talk for solar panels. So, solar panels. So, if you put the solar on your roof, really, I'll guarantee you that it's going to pay for itself in less than 5 years. Probably a lot better than that for a lot of people. So that's not quite an energy efficiency tip, but if you are able to do that, then these energy efficiency savings that I'm going to talk about next really start to pay dividends as well. So, the next thing I'd suggest is that in your house, look at putting LED lights in, because, for an example, in our house, we had a whole lot of downlights in the living areas that got used a lot of the time, and the halogen type ones, and the wattage on them was 50 watts. Every one of those bulbs was consuming 50 watts, and we had, I think there was 20 of these lights across a fairly large living area. So we went to the hardware and we bought some drop-in replacement LED types, and they cost a little bit more, but they consume 5 watts. So that is a 90% electricity saving. So that's a simple thing, and they've got a really long life as well. They last longer than the halogens, and they're so energy efficient. So yeah, that's a hot tip that you can have for free. I guess probably the most important thing is with these things, I mean, great if you put them everywhere, but if you're going to just put a few in, put them in the areas where the lights get used the most, which is your kitchen and your dining and living areas, and maybe bedrooms to a lesser degree, depends how much time you hang out there at night time. So.
Because the price difference when you look at them is quite substantial, and it's easy to go, oh, you know, this one's $7 and this is 20. Are they about 20?
But if you
I looked at it, but you know, again, that saving in electricity is going to pay for it.
Yeah, it more than pays for itself, and they last a lot longer as well. You know, they're typically a 20,000 hour life on these LED lights. So, and then versus the halogens or your incandescents, you know, you're lucky to get a couple of thousand out of some of those, a couple of thousand hours. So that's a yeah, that is true. I mean, there's warm and there's cooler lights. I mean, that's for all of the modern lights. So I guess you choose one that you're after. I personally prefer a cool light. My partner in the back there likes a warmer light. That's right.
Is there a tepid alternative?
Yeah. I go and sit in the study with my nice cool lights on. Good point. Yeah, and I guess that's but the technology is available for both the warm and the cooler lights there. So you don't need to make a choice. The next thing to talk about is energy efficient appliances. I mean, these are things that you use all the time. So we've all seen the star rating on appliances, and they give you an indication of just how energy efficient the appliance is. So again, we always sort of buy to our budget what we can afford, but when you're doing that, have a really close look at the energy efficiency, because over the life of that appliance, be it a washing machine or a dishwasher or things like that you use quite regularly, the energy savings and the water savings, particularly with those washing type devices, can be very high. And that's a way that you can make an upfront investment in energy and water efficiency that's going to pay dividends over the life of that household item, which typically is more than 5 years for quality items, 5 to 10 years. So it's not suggesting everyone goes out and replaces their appliances. Great if you can, but when you're making that next investment in an appliance, just have a really close look at those stars and really think about the total energy and water consumption of those devices over their life. All right, this is another one. Just again, in Alice Springs and a lot of places around Australia, there's a lot of energy that gets used in our houses, and often a big proportion of that energy consumption is around the heating and the cooling of our houses. In an Alice Springs, you actually have a little bit of both, primarily cleaning, but we have a little bit of heating that happens in the cooler months. So you can make a lot of energy savings by having good insulation in your house. So with your houses already built, that's a retrofit, but there is those products that you're able to go and put into your roof. That's one. You get 40% of the heat that you get into your house comes down through your roof on average. As well as that, look at ways that you can shade, particularly the western sides of your house, to keep the sun off, because that hot sun in the afternoon really brings a lot of heat into the house, and if you're just running an air conditioner to take it out again, that doesn't make sense. You're better off stopping the heat coming into your house if you can. Shading, there's nothing better than a lovely tree. We have the most beautiful gums here, or native trees in Australia, and pop some of those in your garden near the fence line and keep that sun off your house. And that tree's gonna do you favors for the rest of your life that you're living there in that house. So all these things, if you're managing to reduce your energy consumption by doing a number of these things, then that PV you have on the roof, it's just you're gonna export more, and good old Power and Water is gonna pay you for every kilowatt hour that you put back into the grid, and that's gonna help, I guess, possibly allow you to fund to do other things in your house. So when you start looking at this stuff, like maybe it's just me, I actually find it quite fun and exciting to find different ways of actually saving energy and water. My wife's laughing at me. No, it can be. I mean, if you're really interested in this stuff, yeah, just spend a bit of time. I did bring a couple of props with me, a couple of my favourite resources that I'll just mention. That was my 6th one I snuck in. Has anyone ever seen a magazine called Renew? I'm not getting any cut from promoting this magazine, but it's a great magazine. It's sort of one that it's all about people who want to make sustainable choices in their lifestyle. So about housing and I guess, yeah, anything that broad term sort of conjures up. So, and another one, it's freely available on the internet. So I didn't invent all those things I just told you about. Actually, it's good common knowledge. There's a website called www.yourhouse.gov.au. A lot of great information. You can also get a hard copy of the book. This is a great thing to have. It's full of great ideas about how you can, have a more energy efficient and sustainable home, which is something I'm sure all of us would enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dow. I think I'll check out that website and share it with people. Now we're going to move. Question.
Just with the PV panels, just a 3-bedroom house, family of 5. What is the outlay, and are there any rebates available at the moment or upcoming?
It's hard to sort of correlate bedrooms with energy consumption. The best thing to do, I guess, is look at your electricity bill and see how many kilowatt hours you might be using. In Alice, it's around about 20 kilowatt hours per day on average. So for each kilowatt of panels you put on your roof, you multiply that by 5, and that's an estimate of how many kilowatt hours you get per kilowatt of panels on your roof. So you can sort of, for a 20 kilowatt hour a day consumption, you might want around 4 kilowatts of panels on your roof, thereabouts. And yeah, rough calculations. Sorry, there was another part of your question.
Just how much roughly would you be looking to get that installed?
Well, look, I was quite lucky with the timing of us buying our house and putting solar on. That's when that home improvement scheme was there, and that actually allowed us to get quite a cost reduction done. So I don't think there are any rebates. That scheme's closed now. But what happens is when you do buy them, there's a thing called the renewable energy certificates, and there you can redeem those for a certain dollar value. And so what that effectively does is like an upfront reduction on the price of the system. So I don't want to sort of comment on exactly what those prices are in Alice Springs. There's a whole bunch of really reputable quality installers in Alice Springs, and like anything, I just recommend you get at least 3 quotes and maybe talk to your friends that have done it about what installers and yeah. But it's a great thing to do.
Just on that point, first stall outside the door, can't write them. Someone will know they'll give you a quote, so go and give a price.
There you go. Yes. True.
Nice bloke. Just had a chat with him, and he answered many of the questions that I've been asking for quite some time. So I recommend that people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But one thing you didn't mention was, when the Solar City program was on, was painting the roof white as a measure of. So what's not covered in solar panels, you can paint the rest white. And just as a way of testing that, we actually tested it yesterday with those Tesla cars out there. One's blue and one's white, and I had a hand on each one, and this hand had to come off, I can tell you, and you can guess which one was hottest.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. And sorry, up the back.
My suggestion is that if you're looking at putting your solar in, put a smart inverter, and there's a new generation of inverters coming out. Currently, I think the power generation company will only give you a reduced amount of the retail value of power. And of course the retail value is fairly constant, but the wholesale value of power fluctuates. And in Western Australia that makes a dramatic improvement on your rebates coming back from your generator, and you do it for a smart inverter. So you don't have to do anything, you set up the inverter. When that strikes, when they need the power, they will pay it at your price, not theirs. So that can be very generous.
Yeah, good point. In Western Australia, I'm aware of that. In the Northern Territory here, we don't have I guess we're moving towards those kind of rules where there is like a spot price. There's also a mix of generation that occurs, which means the price varies. But in the Northern Territory here, we're burning gas 24/7, and that cost of generation is fairly flat across the day. But the effect is that there is a bit of that effect, and I think as we see the market develop here, then I think things like that will come in time. So.
All right, well...
Oh yeah, I was just going to ask in terms of replacing light bulbs with energy savers and things. Is there any kind of recycling of old light bulbs, or is it just?
I'm going to defer.
Yeah,
Oh, we're going to get to that? Yeah.
I can answer that. Yeah, even if the
other cities, but
yeah, the fluorescent gas in the light globes is a hazardous substance. So I think they just recommend that you take it to the council, and they've got a hazardous waste depot there, and you can drop that there. So that's the best thing you can do. At the tip, yeah, the landfill site, yeah.
All right. Well, we might... Oh, last one.
Given that Australia's approximately 30 years behind energy management in buildings, as regards to Europe, for instance, in 1985 the Germans developed a building system which concentrated on air tightness,
Passive house.
thermal bridging. For instance, the house I live in across the other side of Bewley Road, the courtyard has no gap between the slab of the courtyard and the slab of the house. In the summer, that courtyard acts as a radiator and heats the whole house up. And the Germans discovered this and 35 years ago or whatever, and we don't hear anybody talking about air tightness and thermal bridging. You got any comments on that?
This book does.
So this website does, and then book as well. So I mean, yeah, it's a passive house. So yeah. There's I'm not sure if there's any in Alice Springs, but yeah, it's a common topic in that magazine Renew as well. So yeah, very good points. And that's in our house, I guess. Whatever things we can do to improve the energy efficiency and to stop that heat getting in or the warmth getting out in winter, is a great thing to do.
All right, well, thank you, Dow. We could go on with more questions, but we'll go through all the speakers and then we can bring some more questions in at the end. So up the end, we're going from energy here down to water with Jethro Laidlaw from Power and Water. Thanks, Jethro.
Thanks, Costa. Morning, guys. For those who I don't know, I'm from Alice Springs, so grew up here. Lived here a long time. I've worked for Power and Water on a few different water efficiency projects, including Alice desertSMART. So I've had a fair bit to do with water over the years. And so when Rachel asked me to put together these top tips, I was pretty pleased to do so. Alice desertSMART wrapped up 2 or 3 years ago, I think now. 3.5. Richard's memory's better than mine. And so there hasn't been a lot of demand management activity in Alice since then, but Power and Water are hopefully about to change that soon, which is good news. I work mainly in Darwin on their Living desertSMART project, which has been going on for about 4 years. And we've just expanded to Catherine in the last week or two. And so they're looking at expanding some of these programs further. But in the meanwhile, I've got a few top tips here for water efficiency. Water, a lot of people know about natives, a lot of people know about drippers, a lot of people know about watering at night time. So I tried to sort of steer clear of some of those more well-known common recommendations and tried to pepper these with actions really designed for Alice Springs, for our network condition, how Power and Water supplies the water, what concentration of dissolved stuff is in the water, all the kind of really relevant desertSMART tips. So the first one, this one is quite dear to my heart. Working in water efficiency, you hear a lot about energy efficiency. It's kind of sold as sexy, so a lot of people know about energy efficiency, and poor old water efficiency hasn't been as exciting as that for a long time. But now there is something coming in the world of water efficiency that is pretty exciting, and that's a smart controller. It's the Internet of Things has hit water efficiency. So I've actually got one at my house, and it talks to the weather station at the airport and adjusts my irrigation for me according to the climatic conditions. So it's pretty high tech, but it's only a few $100s more than a regular controller, and it will adjust to the parameters I set it for. So for Alice Springs, I've set it for solar radiation and rainfall. So if it's a particularly hot day, it'll give it a bit more water. If it's a less hot day, then it will give it less. And if it rains, it'll turn itself off. And you can even get into chances of rain. So if there's an 80% chance of rain, I won't irrigate my garden. I can turn it on right now from my phone. So it's pretty awesome. It's a good bit of kit. Yeah, you can get right into it if you want to play the odds. But we don't have to go that far with adjusting your irrigation for the seasons. It comes down to kind of the physics of a plant. You know, a plant could only evaporate so much water depending on how much sun there is. So in Alice Springs in summer, we all know it's very hot. So you have to water a lot more frequently than you do in winter. So my lawn, I water it about twice a week in summer. I try and give it about 10 or 15 mils of water when I do that, which involves a bit of maths, but depending on your type of sprinkler, it might be 10 or 20 minutes, even up to 30 minutes for some really low output sprinklers, a few times a week. A lot of people fall into the trap of watering their garden every day, and what that does, if you put a little bit of water on every day, you're effectively encouraging the roots of your plants to be quite shallow. So what you really want to do is to wet a deeper profile of soil, a good 20 or 30 centimetres, and encourage your plant roots to grow down deeper out of that really hot couple of centimetres of topsoil. So a lot of our Central Australian natives, they've got very deep roots, so you water them with drippers and you water for a lot longer, and you can really encourage those roots to grow nice and deep. I remember walking around with Jeff Myers, who a lot of you know, and he's braver than me, so he was demonstrating this fact to a homeowner, and he literally just pulled their plant out of the ground because they were watering every day, and it had these very wide, shallow roots just in the top 5 centimetres of soil. So they're kind of, some people call them rock star plants. They'll live fast and die young because, they grow quickly, but so try and water for as long as you can, less often. Basically, a plant needs the same amount of water each week or each month, and how frequently you put it on depends on the type of soil. So I can't give you a default schedule to use, but sandy soil you water a bit more often, clay and loam a bit less often, but basically it's the same volume of water, you just vary how often you put it on. But don't water maybe veggies, maybe Rod will give you some better advice on that, but basically everything in Alice Springs, the longer you can wait in between waterings, the better. In Alice, if I was to show you the beautiful pie chart of your water use, for most people about 60% of water use is going on your garden. So all of these tips are really about your garden. Leaks is the other one. We did a project a couple of years ago where we checked every residential meter in Alice Springs for signs of leaks within the house, and 1 in 3 homes had a leak. So it's something to be really aware of. With the kind of mineralised water we have here, we seem to get a lot more leaks. Darwin, it's 1 in 8 homes. Catherine, it's 1 in 5. So as you come down the Stewart Highway and get more and more dissolved solids, the leaks seem to be more prevalent. So it's quite interesting. But the best way to know if you've got a leak is to actually do a check at your water meter. Just make sure you're not using any water indoors. Go and have a look at your water meter. The last little digit shouldn't be ticking over. You can take a photo of it and come back 10 minutes later and see if the numbers change slightly from your photo, because a little movement there of those last little tiny dials is a lot of water on your water bill. Those average 1 in 3 leaks, they were costing on average the householder $800 a year, which is 400,000 litres. It's amazing. So something like 15% of all the water that we pump into Alice Springs is going out in leaks. Often in toilets, swampy air cons is another one, irrigation systems. If you've got 50 drippers on an irrigation line and it's leaking, you know, it's just a tiny bit of water getting spread around your garden. Often people don't realise. I should get back to my top tips here. Sorry, I get on it. My next tip was about efficient irrigation. In Alice Power and Water, we supply water mostly gravity fed. So we put our tanks on hills and then it flows out of those tanks to your tap. Often in Alice, because of the topography, your water comes at quite a high pressure, from 350 even up to 600 kPa. And even if, you know, you don't have to really know what number your house is, how much kPa your water's coming at, but the black dripper line and regular drippers, they're designed for about 200 kPa, so about half what the pressure at your house is likely to be. So if you've done the right thing and put drippers everywhere, they only release, they're supposed to release 4 litres an hour, most drippers, but in Alice they'll release about 20 litres an hour because of the higher pressure. So a pressure regulator, they're about $20 or $30. You can put them in line in your irrigation system. That'll save you a lot of water and it'll reduce the leaks in your system, stop the lines from splitting, because all that pipe, it's only designed for a lot less pressure than what probably your house is. So yeah, that's a really important thing, I think, for having an efficient garden. I've put water after dark in here because it is such a important thing in Alice, and it's amazing how much you see people still watering during the day. During the day, half your water's going to be going, so yeah, really set it at night, but if you've got an automatic irrigation system, turn it on during the day and check it every once in a while. So often the leaks go on for years because it's coming on at 2 in the morning or something, and people just will never know. So walk the lines, turn your system on every few months and check it out. I've already covered leaks, my 4th top tip. And the other one, it's a real sort of Alice Springs tip. It's about your swampy, your evaporative cooler. They're great, save you a lot of power. They do use a bit of water. They'll evaporate anywhere from 50 to 100 litres an hour. But the bleed rate of your swampy is the thing that you can control. You can't control how much evaporates, but a swampy needs a bleed rate to dump the build-up of dissolved solids in the system. So when that water evaporates, all the calcium and salt and other magnesium and stuff gets left behind in the bottom of your swampy. So your air conditioner serviceman will set a bleed rate. And if he just leaves it, if he doesn't adjust it, it can be 100, 200 litres an hour going out of your bleed rate. There's generally a little tap in line, and you can adjust it yourself, or you can tell your serviceman you only want 10 or 20 litres an hour coming out of your bleed rate. For him, it makes sense just to leave the tap open, because less likely to block up. He's not paying your water bill, but he's just doing his best to keep your house cool. But it's amazing how prevalent the high bleed rates were in Alice Springs. Richard in the audience, he did about 500 water audits, and he found, all the water auditors found that to be a real common problem. Yeah, so just in summary, it's not your teenage kids, your water bill. If you get a high water bill, don't yell at your children. Check your irrigation system, reduce how often it's coming on, check your house for leaks, and that's the top 2 tips really for keeping on top of water use in Alice. Yeah, it's a good point. It's another good reason for watering longer, less often. If you put there's half a gram of dissolved solids in every litre of water. So if I put 10 litres of water on, that's about a teaspoon of salts, calcium, magnesium, sodium. So if you put a bucket of water on a plant every day, it's like putting a teaspoon of salts on your plant every day. And if you only water, so you're wetting 10 centimetres of soil, then that salt will dry at the perimeter and build up in your root zone. So if you can wet to just the outside perimeter of your plant's roots, then you can reduce that salt build-up in your root zone and your water use at the same time.
There's a very good system called Carefree, developed by the CSIRO. It's been around for about 30 years. That actually softens the water and gives you the opportunity of filtering that out via a primary and secondary filter. So they talked about them yesterday and saying that they were blocked. Well, if you've had a look at one of these things, I'm not too sure how you're going to block it, because it's worthwhile investigating, and you won't replace another tap, because in Alice Springs we get our taps eaten out regularly.
Yeah.
It's not an efficiency.
Yeah, there's a few different types of those out there. I've heard a lot of mixed reports. I've heard some really positive stuff, and I've heard some people saying they don't notice any different. So I think that it might be worth trialling. But as I say, there are other water softeners. There's one with ceramic beads that sucks out a lot of the hardness from your water, and you can do that for internal use. You couldn't really put through the water for your garden through one of those, but some of these electromagnetic water softeners may be worth investigating as well.
Thanks, Jethro. We'll move on now to Rachel, who's going to delve into waste. And Rachel's from the Arid Lands Environment Centre. So, Rach, take it away.
Thanks, Costa. I'm a waste enthusiast, a bit like you mentioned, Costa. You'll regularly find me in a bin looking at what we throw away as a society. Did all you guys watch War on Waste? I think that was very inspiring, and it's generated a lot of community discussion about waste. I did my master's looking at curbside recycling here in Alice Springs, and I guess it's quite unique here. We don't have curbside recycling yet. Hopefully we will. And so that's led me to look at waste in terms of a little bit different, because we can't recycle. I'm always just trying to avoid plastic and buy things that are biodegradable. So, my first tip is I think if you are going to produce less waste in your life, you have to be one of two things: either be organised or be resourceful. So sometimes I've been trying this year to use less single-use plastic, and it's a hard journey. Sometimes I do really well, and other times it's really frustrating, and my shopping bag is full of it. But I think choosing alternatives in the supermarket, you can look at the products you're buying and try and make a selection that is not wrapped in plastic. I think those single-use grocery bags in the produce section, if you can avoid them altogether, I've been using calico bags, old rice bags, and it's just a very simple switch over. If you forget your bags, just hassle someone at Coles or Woolworths or other places for a box, and you can, just that resourcefulness, you just have to be thinking, how can I avoid this plastic today? Taking your own containers to takeaway, that's been quite a positive thing for me. They've responded really well to that most places. I haven't had as much success taking my own glass containers to the butcher or to Coles, because often they'll oblige, but they'll grab the produce with some plastic and then they'll throw the plastic away anyway, so it sort of defeats the purpose. So I guess it's just education. If we can just explain, I'm constantly talking about it to the people that are serving me and just saying, hey, this is important to me, it's important to the planet, can you help me out here and try something different. The next one is the be organised. You do have to remember to do all these things, and I think it takes about 3 weeks to make a habit. And if you can just remember to put your grocery bags in the car, or if you do feel like sushi for lunch, plan ahead and take your own container, that kind of thing. I found meal planning has worked well for my family this year, just having my meals planned out for each day of the week and shopping according to that. We do make a lot of food waste, and it does take the creativity out of it slightly in terms of being organised, but it does mean that you've just got less food waste. And I think we all need to work less. I think we need to maybe all be working 0.8 of a full-time position, and then we would have a little bit more time to make things from scratch ourselves and garden, so we don't have to buy our greens wrapped in plastic. And I think it's just about trying to do a little bit less work and at home just enjoying life a bit more. It's hard. I wish... Yes, I think Sweden has maybe moved towards working less hours, and I think that would be a really great thing for the planet. My third tip is think community. So if you do need something, can you borrow it from a friend? Can you hire it before you actually purchase something? And if you do need to buy it, can you buy it secondhand? So there's some good op shops in town, and I do source a lot of things from eBay when I need them secondhand. But then, yeah, it's hard. Sometimes that comes with a lot of packaging as well. And if you do have to buy something new, invest in the best quality product that you can afford. I think that our products have really declined in terms of their quality. I think we need to be complaining about that. I write a lot of emails to companies saying, hey, you know, this didn't last very long, I haven't got them on today, but the cords I had on yesterday, you know, 12 months, and they're all shredding, and I've patched them, but yeah, it's just, I've had cords that have lasted 10 years before. They've dropped the quality of plastic that's used in some of those products. And I think we just have to buy less, but what we do buy, spend more money and buy the best quality. Wood or natural materials are obviously better than plastics if you can. My fifth tip, and just to let you know, all these tips are just out here. If you want to grab one on the way out, please do. Is to repair what you can. So just look after your products once you buy them. Don't look at my boots, they need a polish, but polish your shoes, mend your clothing. We had a great repair cafe, Costa, here a month ago, and yeah, it was great. I was really heartened. There's so many repair shops in town that exist for everything you need to repair, and there's a list out there of all the local repair shops. And so it's really great for the economy if you can keep your products going longer and keep things out of landfill. And finally, the last one is just to look at waste as a resource. And what I mean by that is that, yeah, it's just not trash. Can you reuse it? Can you feed it to your chickens so it's food for them? Can you compost and put that in your garden? Can you recycle? We do have a lot of recycling options here. It's just at the moment you do need to drive them to the tip, but Recyclable can pick up from your home, as does Russ Driver. He picks up glass and steel cans. So yeah, it is a little bit piecemeal. There is a recycling directory out there though of what you can do where outside. Yeah, great. Are there any questions? Yes.
It would appear that Russ Driver no longer collects glass and plastics. I went out there Friday and he's taken the bins away.
That's a shame. I didn't know that. So he needs all his drums back, or has he closed?
I didn't speak to anybody. I've been there twice now and it's not there anymore.
Oh, you mean the drop-off out the front is not there?
Change of ownership of the business, I think.
Ah, okay. I'll have to look into that. Thanks for that.
I think what we should do is currently I think we've got a 10-cent recycling on drink containers, but we should lobby for it to be 20 cents, so you actually get a reward from it. I was speaking to a chap yesterday who picks up for community groups. $47,000 is what they raised. Now, if we were to double it to 20 cents, then you know that's looking quite good. And you have kids often fighting over empty cans. This is my can. At 10 cents, well, kids don't worry.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also think if we could have that on many items and be looking at the real disposal costs of some of the things, and that we pay when we buy a computer, that we're spending an extra $100 on the purchase price, but that ensures that that product will be going and getting recycled at the end of its life. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, out the back.
Orders the other night had a program about how now it's cheaper for companies to buy in glass from overseas than recycled glass. So I don't know whether that explains why Russ Driver's not collecting glass anymore, but it's ending up in big warehouses and it's being illegally dumped. And, yeah.
It's such a challenge, and yeah, I think maybe the solution is looking at a local scale about what we could use some of that glass for. The council has been proactive. They've got a really amazing facility, a glass crusher here. They do use it in roads as a base, but possibly, yeah, looking at other options. I think one option that I have read about is to crush the glass and use it on golf courses, and we do have a golf course here. So yeah, there's probably, if we can be as creative as we can to think of local solutions, I think that's a good point. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, on that topic, I don't know if anyone's a fisherman here, but Alvey Reels have been in business for 97 years, and they had to close this week because they make their reels so good that they don't break, and they can't compete with the other cheaper reels that get their first taste of a bit of salt or sand and they break and then they go away. So you know, as a buyer, that's how we have to drive our choices to keep those businesses going, because that's tragic, but that's a real sign of this built-in obsolescence, which is an outrage.
Can't you tell them to get real?
Okay, now we're into the garden with Rodney, from Happy Farmer from out near the... is that me? All right, I'll keep it still. So, Rodney, take it away with your top 10 garden tips. Or 5, actually. But...
Yeah. You don't want to be here all afternoon. Yeah. Thanks, Costa. All right, so I've started a market garden, a permaculture design market garden out just south of town, and I've been learning myself about how to grow a garden. I didn't have a background in horticulture or anything, so I just threw these together. But compost is my big thing at the moment. I think this town needs to get onto composting, and the only way that's going to happen is if there's a large-scale pressure. But personally, have a compost at home. I tell everyone you've got to have chickens in your garden. So you're using your food waste. And then everyone complains, summer comes around, everyone complains about their grasshoppers. You won't have grasshoppers if you let your chickens go out around the garden. So especially in the winter when they're small and they're developing, they'll get rid of them before they arrive. But anyway, that's digressing. But yeah, compost. So as a market gardener, I need 40 cubic meters, which is 2 semi-trailer loads of compost a year to garden my 1/3 of an acre of gardens. So it's a small amount of land, and I need a lot of compost. Currently, the only way to get compost in this town is to buy the 25 litre bag, which is completely uneconomical, or to ship it up from Adelaide, which obviously is also not economical. So we need a local source. If we're going to have a local food system, we need to have a local compost system. And I've heard talk about the landfill, and that our landfill is filling up, and is it a third or half of our landfill is food waste, food and garden waste. So if that was being diverted to a useful end, then we'd be giving back to the community and also saving on our landfill, and which then in turn leads to methane gas production. My second tip is to have a pond in the garden. So it creates a little microclimate where you can bring in good pests and or good animals and insects to get rid of your pests. So in my place, I've got goannas that come through. I've got a whole lot of other frogs and all sorts of reptiles and then all the birds and the bees that come in. So all the beneficial insects and animals come in to help manage your pests, which then means that you're going to have a more productive garden in itself. Water, we heard a lot about water, and I'm going to go and get one of these fancy systems that I can dial it up on my iPhone. I'll be sitting in meetings checking my water system. That sounds really exciting, but yeah, definitely the drip irrigation. I use overhead sprinklers, and I'm just moving into using some of that for where I direct seed, because you need to get the germination. But beyond that, you need to be watering deep. 25 mils, they say, a week is what you need to sustain most vegetables. I'd imagine in our summer you probably need a bit more. I haven't quite worked that out yet, but in general sort of terms. And also seedlings. So because we've got a lot of evaporation coming off our gardens, you want to minimize the amount of space that you're watering. So you want to have a highly productive small garden. And I find that I'm moving more and more to transplanting my seedlings, where I raise them in my nursery, where it's a very protected environment and you get a high success rate. And then they're in the ground for half the time. So they're in a little pot for half the time, and then they're in the garden for half the time, which means you're not irrigating as such a large large garden and therefore using a lot more water. And then lastly, protection. So because our climate changes so quickly, 1 week it'll be, at my place it'll be -6 overnight, and then the next couple of weeks later it was getting up to around 30 degrees. So plants don't really like that, and there's a number of ways, and it really changes through the seasons as to how and when you do protect them. But I use plastic coverings to keep the warmth in the winter, just generally, and then to shade them later in the summer. So I don't shade them early in the summer because I want them to get strong, put their roots down deep, and it's only when the really hot weather comes or I'm putting in new seedlings do I protect them with shade. A lot of people chuck their shade up as soon as the sun comes out in Alice Springs, and I think, well, you also need the sun for your veggies to grow, so you got to sort of balance that. But yeah, any questions?
Is the next talk ready to go? Is there a talk in here at 11?
Yeah, I think it might be 1:15.
Oh, 1:15. Okay. So any final questions before we wrap up to any of our speakers? One here, Rod.
Power and water are still the same organisationally. I'm wondering if power can generate some electricity in those water lines. They'll pump hydro and drop a bit of that pressure in the process.
Yeah, you can. It's almost robbing Peter to pay Paul, because you've got to pump it somewhere. But you're right. When after the tank, you might be able to get steal a bit of that pressure, make a bit of energy. I'm not sure of the cost benefit, but this is the way we're all heading. This sort of stuff. These ideas now become more expensive now. They're getting cheaper and cheaper.
There's a system called lead pump, and what it does, it works like the turbo on a car. So it's taking energy from one water main and transferring it to another. So you can use a passive heating system in your house. So if you put piping through your concrete slab and then use the energy from the tap to circulate that water that's run through a solar panel, you just warm your house for free. So you won't notice the difference on your tap because you're running 650 psi, or not psi but kPa. That's a lot of pressure, and we don't need that much. So you can use that to heat your house.
Yeah, I have a question about the packaging, are there any initiatives, to consult with the supermarkets about, packaging, to make them responsible actually for, different packaging or taking back their plastic?
Okay, the question for those of you up the back was, are there any initiatives that are making supermarkets take some more responsibility for the volume and nature of their packaging?
That's a great question. I'm aware in Germany that they've got a very strong program where you can leave the packaging in the shop, and that either the shop or the company is responsible for that. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think it's a really good model. And I guess as consumers we could start to push for that, whether it's leaving your packaging there in the shop. And I mean, sometimes you sort of startle the shopkeepers, and it's not necessarily their problem. But I find emailing companies is really good. I emailed about 10 tea bag companies recently to ask did they have plastic in their tea bags, and I was amazed that they all told me the truth, and yes, they do. And I think if we just write to them and say, I don't want this, I buy your tea, can you please look at other options? I think the consumer voice is more powerful than... I got that off my grandfather. He used to measure toilet paper rolls, and he realised they were shrinking and measly bars, and he used to write to everybody. And he always got a response from them.
Can I comment too? I'll just comment. There's a lot of my customers said to me, I don't want you to use plastic, and I was already trying to find alternatives, and then I was put onto cellophane. So I've just made an order for some cellophane packaging. It's got to be natural cellophane, which I've discovered. They just call clear plastic, now cellophane, but the natural product then biodegrades and is compostable.
So we'll go last question up here in the green.
It's more of a statement. I guess you talked about quality in waste products, but I also think quality in our food, like, and we try to eat organic as much as we can, and obviously growing your own fruit and vegetables and stuff at home, you know where it comes from, but people say that organic is more expensive, but again, it's quality. You're eating quality food that's got more energy and much more beneficial in your health, for your body, because there's going to be, you know, minimum chemicals and whatever. So I believe that's another way to go.
Well, thank you for that closing thought. And look, to all of you here in Alice, don't hesitate to connect with our speakers, because they're here chipping away in different ways and with different powers of leverage. And your support gives them more push. And whether it's power and water, or whether it's energy, or whether it's the Environment Centre, particularly when it comes to leverage and lobbying and driving change, your support, if you come up with an idea, share it, send an email and say, I was thinking this, what do you think? Rachel can respond. Ask questions of power and water and say, you know, what are other solutions you've got that can help me? Because that way you get, the beauty of being here in Alice is, being a smaller community, you have more access to these organisations. So why not use it to help drive the organisations to change, for the change for better for everyone, for the common good. So please come up and speak to our speakers after the talk, and but more so keep talking to them after today, because they need your input, because you're on the ground, and just as Rod's on the ground, he's experiencing things. He's found this cellophane, and then if you find or read an article that there's something better, an actual compostable one, well then spread it, give it to the Environment Centre so they can put it out to the networks, and that way things aren't sort of just simmering away down in Sydney or in Melbourne or in Europe, as you're talking about. These sorts of things should be in the council standards, and that is simply an email to say change your design detail, boom, and it can be done on Monday. So yeah, share that info. And can I have a big round of applause for our three speakers, Dow, Jethro, Rachel and Rodney. Thanks very much.